Welcome back to the Bliss Podcast, episode 14. This is your host, Maitreya Rishidasa, here with His Grace, Purija Prabhu. How are you, Prabhu?
Thank you. Very well.
Very nice, very nice. Avoiding death, hopefully. Avoiding hell.
Trying my best, yeah.
Okay. So, this week, we're going to be discussing hell. This is the continuation of last week's podcast, where we discussed the palatable and important subject of death. What happens when we die? That was last week's topic. If you haven't seen it or heard it, please go back on the Expand the Bliss channel. You can see there all the previous podcasts, and I highly recommend you go and check it out. You can also go on the Expand the Bliss website. We have many articles on there by both Srila Prabhupada and the devotees here at Bliss. So you can read to your heart's delight about what happens when you die. And that's a very nice subject matter. So what happens...
So what are we going to talk about today?
This week we're going to be talking about hell. That place that one will go to after he dies if he doesn't become Krishna conscious.
And what's on the program today?
Well, I was thinking that we're going to discuss a little bit about hell itself, and then we're going to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then I found some Nectarian stories, and you also found some stories about the incidences of people actually having near-death experiences or dying, and nurses in hospitals retelling their stories, and people retelling their stories about people's experiences with Yamadutas, the messengers of death coming to collect them to go to hell, and how this actually, is confirmed by modern medical science. They even have a term called, what is that?
Terminal restlessness.
Terminal restlessness. So it's even established in medical science that this is happening. So my first question for today, Prabhu, is: are we not in hell right now?
I thought you were going to ask me that if I'm getting ready to die.
Well, I mean...
You already asked that, right?
I think I already asked that.
Okay.
Are you?
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm getting ready to die. Any moment I can die.
This life is full of dangers.
Yeah. How you want to die?
Well, chanting Hare Krishna, first and foremost. Maybe on Sankirtan. That's like how I would die, I think, on Sankirtan. Like a martyrdom.
Mm-hmm. There was a priest who spoke to Prabhupada, Cardinal Danilio from France.
Right.
He's the one who, when the children...
Yes. You have to feed the children.
You have to eat the children also. So he was found dead.
Wow.
2 days or 1 day after he spoke to Prabhupada, after the interview was recorded. And he was found in the prostitute's house.
Oh boy.
He hanged himself. So, anyway.
Prabhupada got him philosophically there. He cornered him a little too much philosophically. Very nicely done. Well, we're going to be discussing what possibly happened to the Cardinal now. So, but I was thinking, Prabhu, isn't this material life, this world we're experiencing right now, isn't that kind of hell already? Aren't people already experiencing a hellish condition of life? I mean, some people will say that I don't believe in hell. There is no such place as hell. This is all fiction. But can we say that this place right here is actually hell?
No. This is very nice. Still very nice.
This place is very nice. What? So this place right here is very nice, in your opinion?
Yeah, with all the wars and all the murderers and Charles Manson and Fenton, all these crazy murderers who chopping people and pedophilia and yeah. it's still better than what we're gonna talk about today.
Oh boy. Play that music. I have a feeling we're gonna have to expand the sound library that we have for the podcast, or is everything here just universally absolutely applicable?
We have played this for the first time.
This sound effect for the first time? Okay, let us know down in the comment section. Everyone should go and listen to the previous podcasts profusely and look to see if we've ever used this sound excerpt. I'm pretty positive we've used this one. All right, so yes, although this current condition of life is extremely hellish, believe us, it is not as bad as what is entailed in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, which we will be getting to after the short break, which will be coming up very shortly. Okay, so now we're back from the break, and we're going to be talking about the fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the last chapter, where Shukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit about the various hellish worlds. So maybe we have some background music to play for this reading. What? There it is. Okay. DJ Puruja Prabhu is on the beat. Okay, so the first...
I'm playing piano.
Wow, beautiful. Live.
Thank you.
This is the first for any podcast. Live music playing.
Hare Krishna.
So, Hell. This is the first planet that Chikadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit. He says, a person who accepts his body as his self works very hard day and night for money to maintain his own body and the bodies of his wife and children. While working to maintain himself and his family, he may commit violence against other living entities. Such a person is forced to give up his body and his family at the time of death, and when he suffers the reaction for his envy of other creatures by being thrown into the hell called Raurava. So, Prabhupada explains in the purport, one who accepts this bodily bag of three elements, bile, mucus and air, as his self, who has an affinity for an intimate relationship with his wife and children, who considers his land worshipable, who takes bath in the waters of the holy places of pilgrimage, but never takes advantage of those persons who are in actual knowledge, he is no better than an ass or cow. There are two classes of men absorbed in the material concept of life. Out of ignorance, a man in the first class thinks that his body to be himself. Therefore, he is certainly like an animal. The person in the second class, however, is not only thinks that his material body to be his self, but he also commits all kinds of sinful activities to maintain his body. He cheats everyone to acquire money for his family and his self, and he becomes envious of others without reason. Such a person is thrown into the hell known as Raurava. If one simply considers his body to be his self, as do the animals, he is not very sinful. However, if one needlessly commits sins to maintain his body, he is put into the hell known as Raurava. This is the opinion of Srila Vishnavat Chakravarti Thakur. Although animals are certainly in the bodily concept of life, they do not commit any sins to maintain their bodies, mates or offspring. Therefore, animals do not go to hell. However, when a human being acts enviously and cheats others to maintain his body, he is put into a hellish condition. Wow, heavy. So, Prabhu, I don't believe in hell. I just don't think hell is this is clearly fiction. I mean, how can hell be real?
Yes, many devotees, when Srila Prabhupada wrote this fifth canto, when the fifth canto came out, was printed, many devotees experienced doubts. This can't be real. There are also descriptions of the universe. The moon is further than the sun. It was quite a challenge to their conditional. So ultimately, it comes back to the same point. What authority are you going to accept? By our speculation or direct sense perception, there is no way how we can find out what's going to happen after death. But something is going to happen, that's for sure. So we are eternal. That's a fact that you don't need any scripture to realize that. Your body is changing. You're not changing. You are conscious still. You're the same person, although the body has passed. You have passed through so many different bodies in this lifetime, from a childhood to youth to old age. So that's your practical experience of your eternal nature. And when the old body is finished, you go on. Your existence goes on. Now, where are you going to go? According to the Bhagavad Gita, those who are situated in mode of goodness, they'll be promoted to the higher planets for higher material enjoyment. Those who are in mode of passion, they attain the earthly planet again. And those who are in mode of ignorance, they will descend to the animal species. So, I mean, this is a very logical explanation why there's so many species of life around us. How come this living entity lives as a bird or a dog or a worm or insect? And how come there's a nice American boy, nice English boy, nice Indian boy, whatever, or a girl? There's so many varieties, and the Americans, some Americans are poor, some are rich, some are famous, some are infamous. There must be an explanation for this. So the Vedic scriptures, they explain that there's a karmic law. Whatever you do in this life as a reaction, if you do bad things, then you're going to suffer in your next life. If you do good things, you're going to enjoy, like anything. So this is a very logical explanation. What other explanation is there? You tell me. You can say, oh, I don't believe, but what is the explanation? To simply say, oh, there is nothing, that is like an ostrich. I already mentioned the ostrich on the previous podcast. It's a bird that puts his head in the sand whenever there's a danger, instead of dealing with the situation. So that sort of attitude is not very scientific. We have to be scientific, not following blind faith.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a very interesting point that modern science affirms by two of their own theories that you can prove both of these things, karma and the eternality of the soul. Or even if you don't believe in the soul, reincarnation, let's say like you believe in Buddhism, I mean we can prove the soul in so many ways, but even if you have like a Buddhist mentality that we're just the body, the law of conservation of energy is there. So the energy dissipates at the time of death, and then it has to go somewhere. And we see that other living entities are coming into creation at some point. Their bodies are manifesting. So it's impossible to deny that the energy that at least is your body is coming into being in some other form.
Why do we have any sense of morality in the first place? Where is it coming from, this idea, good and bad? You know, although the atheists, they would say that, that is just a relative terminology, good, bad, these are meaningless designations. But we have the laws, we have some morality, we have something. If it's an illusion, then give up all the laws, give up all morality. You can't do that. And then the next question is, what is the origin? How come people have started designating something as good or bad, and so on and so on? How do you explain this? So there must be karma. If a person is very sinful, then he will go to the hellish worlds to get trained for the animal body. The animal has a lower consciousness. It's the same consciousness, the same spirit soul, but the consciousness is more covered. The more, let's say, you have the species of plants, the more simple the living entity is, the more covered his next body will be. So those who are very simple, they attain very covered bodies like that of microbes. This is all stated in the Vedas. So it makes perfect sense.
The sense has become duller and duller. Yeah. That I just kind of maybe had like a little realization also that it's like a natural way for nature to push the living entity to want to come to spiritual life. You want to enjoy the senses as much as you can in like the human form, let's say. And the more you want to do that, you get put in a body where you can't enjoy the senses at all. You become very dull. So then you can't enjoy in that way anymore, and you become like more. Your consciousness gains some credit to want to come to spiritual life, to stop enjoying the senses. So anyway, maybe we could go on reading. Okay. The next section by Srila Shukadev Goswami. He says, a man or woman who indulge in sexual intercourse with an unworthy member of the opposite sex is punished after death by the assistance of Yamaraj in the hell known as Tapta Surmi. There are such men and women are beaten with whips. The man is forced to embrace a red-hot iron in the form of a woman, and the woman is forced to embrace a similar form of a man. Such is the punishment for illicit sex. Purports. Generally, a man should not have sexual relations with any other woman than his wife. According to Vedic principles, the wife of another man is considered one's mother, and sexual relations are strictly forbidden with one's mother, sister, and daughter. If one indulges in illicit sexual relations with another man's wife, that activity is considered identical with having sex with one's mother. This act is most sinful. The same principle holds for a woman also. If she enjoys sex with another man than her husband, the act is tantamount to having sexual relations with her father or son. Illicit sex is always forbidden, and any man who indulges in it is punished in a manner described in this verse. One who in this world or in this life is very much proud of his... Sorry, that's the next shloka. So, Prabhu, you're telling me that sex is bad. Sex, such a nice thing. I am free. You can't try and control me to stop the most pleasurable thing in this world. You're saying the basic principle, love is not allowed.
Well, it is allowed, but you just read what are the consequences.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, fair enough. But why I should have to punish for something so nice?
Well, it creates disturbance in the society. It destroys the family. Family is good. The child needs the mother and the father together to raise the child and cooperate together.
Vana Sankara.
Yeah. So if there's unfaithfulness, then naturally there's a disturbance in the society. So it is very sinful. People don't understand. They think, oh, well, it is pleasure. Yeah, it is very, very nice pleasure, definitely. But we also have to think of the consequences.
Actually, this point about the parents being, not together or not faithful. Actually, it does, this Vana Sankara that's in the Bhagavad Gita, I was just thinking that actually many children today, when they don't have a father, they completely deviate. Actually, this is like what they trace out to be the reason why children start gang life and all this violence is happening, and kids are taking to drugs now because they have no good role models, they don't have good upbringing.
What people don't understand is that sex is a major principle in a society. It's actually, although people think it's now there's sex is not a taboo anymore. Actually, it is a great taboo, because everything the materialistic society does is based on the sex impulse. The man wants to impress a woman, and the woman wants to impress a man. They're looking for each other. They want to make a family, and ultimately they want to enjoy each other. So if this principle is not regulated in marriage and Krishna consciousness, then it turns into a complete selfishness and self-exploitation, which creates more and more destruction and problems in the society. So in the Bhagavad Gita also, Arjuna is saying that, the Bhagavad Gita is here.
Yeah, epic battle music.
Yeah, so in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says that if the women are not protected by the husbands, if the husbands die in war, they'll be unchaste, because the men will exploit them, they'll take advantage. And there will be Varna Shankara. And the Varna Shankara will neglect the spiritual life, the religious formularies, and the ancestors will not be worshipped. And in this way, the whole society turns into hellish condition. This is all stated in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So people don't understand how important it is to protect women and abstain from illicit sex life.
Women don't need to be protected. Women are independent, Prabhu. What are you talking about? Women are strong, independent women. Did you just say they need to be dependent? That's sexism.
It is natural. As Prabhupada says, it is natural. Why the women wear makeup and why they wear nice clothes? Because they want to be subservient to the men. Please take me to your service. They're asking. This is natural. It is not something derogatory. It is the nature of the woman to attract the men to take care of her, so she can take care of the child very nicely.
Okay.
This is good.
Yes.
So they should not be exploited. Why this is sexism? If we say that girls should be protected, they should be treated nicely, they should be given all facilities, so they're not disturbed, they don't have to work. Why is this bad? This is good.
People would consider calling themselves independent better than protecting women. Actually, like we say, we don't let women go out in society and, get raped and all this kind of stuff, unprotected by man, and used in the workplace and stuff for so-called promotions. But they rather say they're independent.
Well, the men are also nonsense. They abuse. That's another thing. But to be independent, girls, if girls are independent, they suffer. That's a fact.
Just one more point I'd like to mention, because you mentioned this sex life, so people don't think it's taboo. But Prabhupada mentions several times that if sex life isn't taboo, then why you cover? Why you hide away when you're having sex life? You do it in a closed space behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's keep on reading. A very important shloka by Shukdev Goswami. One who in this world or this life is very proud of his wealth always thinks, I am so rich, who can equal me? His vision is twisted and he is always afraid that someone will take his wealth. Indeed, he even suspects his superiors. His face and heart dry up at the thought of losing his wealth, and therefore he always looks like a wretched fiend. He is not in any way able to obtain actual happiness, and he does not know what it is to be free from anxiety. Because of the sinful things he does to earn money, augment his wealth and protect it, he is put into the hell called Suchimukha, where the officials of Yamaraj punish him by stitching thread through his entire body like weavers manufacturing cloth. Sorry, I just lost the purport. Purport. When one possesses more wealth than necessary, he certainly becomes very proud. This is the situation of men in modern civilization. According to Vedic culture, Brahmanas do not possess anything, whereas Kshatriyas possess riches, but only for performing sacrifices and other noble activities as prescribed in the Vedic injunctions. A Vaishya also earns money honestly through agriculture, cow protection, and some trade. If a Sudra gets money, however, he will spend it lavishly without discrimination, or simply accumulate it for no purpose. Because in this age there are no qualified Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, or Vaishyas, almost everyone is a Shudra, Kalu Shudra Sambhaval. Or therefore, the Sudra mentality is causing great harm to modern civilization. A Sudra does not know how to use money to render transcendental loving service to the Lord. Money is also called Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is always engaged in the service of Narayan. Wherever there is money, it must be engaged in the service of Lord Narayan. Therefore, everyone should use his money to spread the great transcendental movement of Krishna consciousness. If one does not spend his money for this purpose but accumulates more than necessary, he will certainly become proud of the money and he illegally possesses. The money actually belongs to Krishna, who says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the true enjoyer of sacrifices and penances, and I am the owner of all the planets. Therefore, nothing belongs to anyone but Krishna. One who possesses more money than he needs should spend it for Krishna. Unless one does so, he becomes puffed up because of his false possessions, and therefore he will be punished in the next life, as described herein.
So it's interesting because I don't think many devotees are reading these purports. We're engaged in this propagation of Krishna consciousness through exactly what Srila Prabhupada says, for the benefit of the general mass of people who are ignorant of the consequences of their activities. So why not give a nice donation for this purpose? How the money is spent otherwise, that we have to consider. Because if it's not used for the service of Narayan, as Srila Prabhupada says, then there will be also consequence to this. One becomes overly proud. That we have also encountered. Many people who criticize unnecessarily the preachers of Krishna consciousness, trying to find some fault. So we should all push on together this preaching, especially the distribution of these wonderful books of Srila Prabhupada, and distribution of prasadam, setting up centers. This is the real service, and if we do not use money for this purpose, if we simply make prasadam for ourselves and eat very nicely, and that is not devotional service to Krishna.
Taking prasadam, that is service, no? How is it not service if I offer to Krishna, I chant my rounds? How am I not performing service?
Well, that is good, but Prabhupada says it must be used for this purpose of propagation of Krishna consciousness. You must propagate. It's not a solitary practice, it's Krishna consciousness. It is Sankirtan movement, everybody together. As many people as possible should be engaged in Sankirtan Yagya. So, either you preach yourself or support the preachers. But neither you preach yourself nor you are supporting the preachers. So that will not be very pleasing to Krishna.
So how can people donate to us? We have some platforms, right? On GoFundMe and Patreon. You can just go on the GoFundMe page, which is GoFundMe at Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society. Or is it Expand the Bliss? Is it Expand the Bliss or Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society for the GoFundMe? Okay, I think it's Bhaktivedanta Lives. Anyway, we're going to link it in the description of this podcast. So you can go there, you can give however much you'd feel be generous. And on Patreon also, you can become a Patreon for as little as $5 a month. That's really not very much at all. Or you can become an Uttama Adhikari donor and give 100 a month. And that will be very beneficial for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. Also, if you become a Patreon, you get varieties or increments of rewards. You can be entitled to at least one free ebook compiled by His Grace Parishit Prabhu. There are many we have compiled on the... You can see some previews on the website. There's the Teachings of Lord Buddha. Very nice. So you have one thing to add, Prabhu?
I want to read, this is a letter from Srila Prabhupada. He writes to one devotee. Prabhupada writes, "You write to say how you were saved from a commitment of suicide. So you have seen the mantra in Ishopanishad, Yeka Chatma Hanujanaha. So not only you, but almost all the conditioned souls within this material world, practically 99% of the whole population, is committing suicide. As it is natural for a gentleman to try to stop a person committing suicide when it so happens just in one's presence. Similarly, when we see that so many men and women are simply committing suicide as described in the Ishopanishad, Yekachat Mahanujana, let us try to save them through this Krishna consciousness movement." You see? So, what is that Krishna consciousness movement? the Bhaktivedanta lives in sound society. That is the Krishna conscious. So if you donate to us, we will not use the money in the casino exactly, but we'll use it for distribution of this movement, direct preaching to the conditioned souls, giving them Srila Prabhupada's books, giving them the prasadam, giving them the Maha Mantra. We go every day chanting here in our area of preaching, and we need donations. We can't go on like this without any donations. Everybody needs a place to stay, and prasadam also takes. We need funds to purchase the ingredients. So please support. Don't be lazy. Don't be proud. This is a very important movement, this Krishna consciousness movement, what Srila Prabhupada wanted. So we all have to take part, and not simply that preachers will go. Everybody has to do his bit. Everybody, the workers, the businessmen, the administrators, everyone has to take part. It is not a sectarian movement that some weird monks are doing. Everyone should lend his hand to help this Sankirtan movement. So please, kindly help us.
Do you mind if I say something, Prabhu?
Yeah?
Okay, well, I was just thinking that, you're going to feel also ecstatic if you donate to those who are propagating Krishna consciousness. If that's what you can do, if you can't go and distribute the books and do Harinam every day, or whatever it may be, distribute prasadam, then if you give a donation, Srila Prabhupada says that will elevate you to the spiritual platform. The grahastas, they give 50%. That will elevate them to the spiritual platform. So you will actually feel spiritually fulfilled if you do it like this. And otherwise, you're not acting in Krishna consciousness.
It is very sad that people are spending money for so much nonsensical things. So many nonsense things. And people also collect donations for nonsensical charity. Healing the sick, helping the poor. Even Lord Jesus, he says, they will always be there. This is their karma. This is the karma. You cannot help by donation. But this Krishna consciousness preaching helps the soul. This is the ultimate solution, the ultimate end of all suffering. No more suffering, no more birth, no more death, no more old age, no more disease. This is what we are offering. So please kindly try to understand the importance of this movement.
If you're actually serious about helping people, you'll donate to the cause for the soul. Okay, yeah. I was also thinking that, if you want to have any compassion, like if you read these descriptions in the Bhagavatam of the hellish planets, I mean, how horrible, how terrifying such a life in the hellish planets is, then if you understand that people will go to these planets if they have no information of Krishna consciousness, and that you can save them by giving a donation, why wouldn't you give a little bit?
Every day, people who are unaware of the Krishna conscious science are committing more and more sinful activities. The meat eating is going on profusely. Illicit sex, everybody has. Gambling, intoxication, everything. It's a daily affair. And they're all gliding to the hellish planets to suffer incredible miseries. So if we have a little tinge of compassion, we must preach Krishna consciousness. We must. Otherwise, we're not Vaishnavas. We're not devotees. We're simply pretenders. It's a fact.
Okay. So, should we now move on to the story, Prabhu? A little light in the mood? Okay. Maybe you could cue the music, Prabhu. Okay. Are you reading the last one here?
Yeah, this is an amazing story. When I read this, I cried. Literally, I broke in tears. It's a devotee lady who was trying to save her father, and she did save him. It's really moving.
Okay. So, Sribangi Devi Dasi, Mataji, she says, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the Vaishnavas, especially the preachers who are saving the world from hell.
There you go.
All glories to your service.
See, this lady, she can appreciate because she has the actual experience. We don't want to hear. We wait until the experience. So we should be intelligent. We should hear before the experience comes.
Okay, so she says, have you ever heard of terminal restlessness? Probably not, unless you are a doctor or a nurse. But although the name is new, the condition is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada says, and similarly, miserable condition of death, when one is lying in coma, so many sufferings is going on, so many dreaming, the Yamaduta is coming. Sometimes the man on the deathbed cries, he's so much suffering, but there is no remedy. Everyone is helpless. So that is the miserable condition of death. That's from Srila Prabhupada, Gorakhpur, February 18th, 1971. I will tell you about how I found out about it, and this story is a classic example of the dreadful reality faced by all the suffering souls of this material world. It also shows clearly what Srila Prabhupada has saved us from, and why we should feel eternally indebted to him. It all started when I received a phone call from my parents saying that Dad was sick with cancer. I believe in omens, and my right eye started twitching profusely, so I knew that the outcome wouldn't be good. That was in the beginning of November. But Dad was optimistic. He was sure that he could overcome everything, as he had always been the controller in every situation and had faced many trials in life and overcome them all. Until now, he seemed to be a lucky guy, enjoying good facilities and good karma in every respect. Little did he know that his good karma had come to a grinding halt. If Krishna wants to save you, no one can kill you. But if Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you. Dad had prostate cancer, and it had spread into his bones. He was having chemotherapy, but it failed twice. I rang one day, and he literally wept. I'm dying, he said. I felt compassion for him. He was helpless in the hands of cruel fate. I tried to help. Well, don't worry, I said. There is reincarnation. You will be okay. Just pray. God is kind. But it was a little comfort to someone who was bewildered and didn't know God. And after that time, I felt I was somehow connected to his suffering. I could feel all of his fear and anxiety. I would pray all the time. I didn't want to experience any of it, but I guess I was karmically connected to him, so there was no escape no matter how far away I was. The physical suffering was nothing compared to the mental torture he was experiencing. He became humble, and I dropped everything a couple of times and flew from Vrindavan to be with him. In the past, he had never wanted to hear anything about Krishna, so I had given up trying years ago. We never discussed the subject. I would just feed him prasad, he loved my cooking, and talk about other things. I had Vrindavan dust with me and some Yamuna water mixed with Ganga. There were also some small Jagannath deities. I deposited all these things in the house, hoping they would have an effect and using them whenever possible in Dad's food and so on. I kept praying and hoping that somehow I could convince him about Krishna before he died. He was so bewildered and humbled by his lack of control over the situation that he was willing to listen to some degree. He was clutching at straws. I read him some Bhagavad Gita and he said it was comforting. I also read to him from coming back. He liked that because the idea of reincarnation was something positive to look for in the future, and he was desperate for that. I saw there in the chapter about a jamil and felt I should read it to him, but thought maybe it was too much to thrust upon him. Besides, I was there, and because I was chanting everything it would be okay, or so I thought. I really believed you could just chant Hare Krishna and all bad things would go away. I guess this is a superficial and neophyte viewpoint. The material world is such a heavy place, and with my great ego I was just overestimating my own purity. I realized later that I'm not even a devotee. If you are incapable of saving yourself, how can you possibly save anyone else? I had to fly back to Vrindavan several times as I had family and business commitments, but the whole time I could feel him pulling me. I had zero mental peace during this time. I think he really wanted me there and was emotionally dependent on me, as I was the only one offering any tangible solutions. People are basically not sympathetic either, and he needed a lot of understanding. I am not good at handling suffering, so this was difficult to bear, seeing someone you care for suffering so much anxiety. I left my Jagannath deities there and asked them to forgive any offence, but to please protect my father while I went back to India on business just for a couple of weeks. Then my mother rang. She was at her wit's end. Please come, she said. He is in hospital now, and we need you here. I jumped on the first flight, and as soon as I arrived, I moved into the hospital with Dad. It was incredible how Krishna seemed to arrange it. They gave us a private room and let me sleep there and care for him. Nobody questioned my authority, and my mother just backed off and let me do anything. She is a Roman Catholic and doesn't allow me usually to speak anything about Krishna. I realized that the Kamis are so far into denial that they try to avoid the reality of death as much as possible. So it was a way out for her if I took the burden. She could go home and pretend nothing was happening, yet still know that Dad was being taken care of by me. Or maybe deep down she also felt desperate for his spiritual welfare, and I was the best solution they had. I'm not really sure. Once it goes all beyond their material perception and control, they become completely bewildered. I would only know that I was able to fully take over the care of my father. Many people must suffer and die alone in hospitals, going through what I'm about to tell. I slept next to Dad and tended to his every need. I managed to get Tulasi beads on him, which one demoniac nurse kept taking off. I got mental about it. Oh no, I thought, he is so sinful he can't wear Tulasi. Then I just got in this mindset that I was going to be aggressive and keep those beads on him no matter what. She would take them off and I would smile sweetly and put them back on. I read some Bhagavad Gita to him. He didn't eat at all for the 12 days leading up to his death. For 8 of those days he had only Ganga and Yamuna water and nothing else. I controlled everything that went into his mouth. I even started sprinkling Vrindavan dust in his water as well. Toward the end, he was on another level, not of this world. He seemed to be perceiving things that other people couldn't. For example, every night I would put on a Shiva t-shirt to wear to bed. There was a large picture of Lord Shiva on the front of it. My habit was to wait till he was asleep in a subtle manner, sprinkle a little bit of Vrindavan dust on his head, in case he died while I was asleep. One night I had sprinkled the dust, and he sprang awake with a wide-eyed look of amazement. "Oh, you're all surrounded by dust," he said. Another night, in the same way, he sprang awake and looked at my Lord Shiva shirt. "Careful," he said, "there's fire coming out of your shirt." The day before he died, he said there were big dogs in the room, and an ugly person floating outside the window. The evening before his death, he began to feel disturbed. "Untie my legs." He was saying, "To I don't know whom," and he was visibly distressed. My mother and my daughter decided to stay overnight at the hospital, which they didn't normally do. I drifted off to sleep, and so did Mum. At about 9:30 p.m., my daughter woke me up. "Mum," she said, "come quickly. Something's happening to Grandad." I raced over to the bed, and Dad was moaning. "Please, please," he was saying. "I beg you, let me loose. Please let me loose." His tone was humble and terrified, and his eyes were lowered. He was to say these words many, many times over the next 6 hours. He was trying to jump off the bed and hide under his pillow. You have to understand that he was skin and bones. He couldn't even urinate without help, and here he was, suddenly trying to get up and run off. He was thrashing around like a madman. This is really inauspicious, I thought. I grabbed him by the shoulders. "Dad," I said, "what's happening? You okay?" He was terrified. "Oh, Sue," he cried out. "I tried to get away, I really did, but they got me." His voice went up to a shout. "She's got me," he yelled out. At that time, I should have realized what was happening, but the fact that he said, "she's got me," put me off, and somehow I got covered over, and for the next 6 hours I just tried to comfort him. He cried out again and again. "Oh, for God's sake," he would shout, "just let me rest, just 10 minutes, please, I beg you." His tone of voice was terrified, and all the while humble and begging. I would chant, and he would relax a little. Then a nurse would come and distract me. He would start again, thrashing and begging. "What's wrong?" I asked. He seemed exasperated. "I'm trying to tell you," he said, "but I just can't." Then at 3 a.m., it suddenly dawned on me that the Yamadutas had him. It was so obvious, and I felt so foolish for not realizing it until now. I turned to my 13-year-old daughter and told her that I thought the Yamadutas had him. "Yes," she said. "I know. I woke you up because I saw 3 of them floating above his bed, and he was cowering and looking up." She had actually seen them. She described later how they looked, with ball-like tusks coming out from their mouths and glaring eyes. She had thought that there was some kind of ghost trying to steal his soul from his body. Of course, by Krishna's arrangement, my mother was sleeping, oblivious the whole time. What to do, I thought. I started to pray to Krishna. "Oh, please let him go, Krishna," I was begging. The super soul would answer. "Why?" he would say. "He will only offend again." Then I was really upset. I started praying to Yamaraj, "Please, Yamaraj," and all the while I was chanting. I told Dad I was sorry I hadn't realized sooner that they had a hold of him. He nodded, traumatized. His whole death experience was hellish. I'm sorry that any souls have to experience such a thing, and understand now why Srila Prabhupada felt such urgency to save everyone. Dad, I said, do you want me to hold you and chant? Yes, yes, he said. Have they still got you? No, they let me go. Then I held him tight for the next 3 hours, and he slowly gave up his life through his mouth, peacefully with me chanting right next to his ear and dripping Ganga and Yamuna water in his mouth. I stayed fully focused on chanting very close to his ear until he breathed his last at 6 a.m. He went straight out of his mouth, and his eyes just closed. Poor him. Cruel, cruel, hellish material world. It had only been 7 months from the start of his illness, and the 71-year-old story of his life was forcibly ended. So, she then goes to detail that the nurses call this condition terminal restlessness, and the nurses, they actually confirm that this is something happens to many patients that are on the edge of death and are just about to die. So anything you'd like to add to this story? Any comments, Baru?
Yeah, they have, the nurses, the doctors, they have symptoms of this terminal restlessness. That's where the, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's where the Yamadutas, the superintendents of death, come to drag the soul from the body to the hellish planets. So sometimes people, they exclaim about this rope, because the Yamadutas, they have a rope, they tied the soul with a rope and they drag it from the body. And they have these dogs. So people are screaming, oh, the dogs, they're coming, they're having my leg bound, I have the rope, please don't take me. It's written, they have these symptoms. And of course, what do? They pump them with morphium. Nice. So they don't scream.
They're numb.
Yeah, so they're not disturbing others with their screamings with their last desperate cries for help. So how important it is to distribute Krishna consciousness. I mean, this Mataji who was explaining this whole story about her dad. She would put this Yamuna water and Ganges water in his mouth and Tulasi. These are things that can help even a person who's very sinful, help them at the last moment of death to elevate them spiritually. These are very powerful substances related to Krishna. So, but most of the people, they don't have such opportunity, and even in real life, sometimes they never meet a devotee in their whole life. I mean, especially after Srila Prabhupada left this planet. And there are no devotees in the streets. There are no Harinam is not going on. The books are not distributed profusely as they should be. People are asking us, I have encountered this many times, what is Hare Krishna? I never heard of Hare Krishna. So you can only imagine how many people are dragged to hell nowadays, and how much we can help them.
One person dies every 7 seconds in the material world.
There you go. And unfortunately, the sinful activities are increasing. The people, the children, they smoke ganja, they do drugs very early now. Everything is degrading more and more, because that's the only thing you can do in a materialistic civilization, just degrade more and more sense gratification. So how much this movement is important.
Okay, so thank you for listening to this 14th episode of the Bliss Podcast. You can support us on the platforms I previously mentioned, Patreon, GoFundMe. You can keep up to date with the Bliss activities on our social media. Expand the Bliss across the board, except for Facebook. The Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society. Please let us know your thoughts, your suggestions, your challenges. Challenges are welcome. In the comments section down below this video, all the links will be included. And we welcome you to tune in next time to the 15th episode of the Bliss Podcast. Anything else you'd like to add, Prue?
The next podcast will be on the topic of love and compassion and how they relate to Krishna consciousness.
Okay, very nice. Okay, I think that does it for this episode. Hare Krishna to all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. We can do that again with some higher volume, I think.